Welcome to Sometimes There's Side Eye, a podcast about two friends having real and unfiltered conversations about dogs and people. Listen as we talk about our lives with dogs, training, behavior, share some laughs, and a lot of banter. My name is Heather,
My name's Kristi.
and today we are talking about the topic of I want to get a puppy to raise them right in conjunction with it's all in how you raise them.
And before we get started, just a reminder to subscribe, rate us, and share us. So if you are somebody who forgets to do that at the end, like me, you can pause your podcast right now and do that, and then get right back in with us and enjoy this topic.
And we are so excited to talk about this.
One of the reasons that I suggested the topic of I want to get a puppy to raise them right, and that so easily goes into it's all in how you raise them, is because since the pandemic, I have been approached by so many people asking for good rescues or good breeders because they want to get a puppy. They wanted to get a dog, but they wanted to make sure it was a puppy. And they kept telling me because I want to make sure it's raised right, which made me kind of start wondering, like, well, what do you mean raised right? There's nothing wrong with wanting to get a puppy to raise it right, but
You're Christy, and then you hate because you hate puppies.
oh, yeah, I don't hate puppies. I just don't want one in my home full time. Please don't give me a puppy as a gift. I will not enjoy that.
Imagine if I showed up at your door and I was like,
Oh,
Merry Christmas, Happy Birthday, and Happy Valentine's Day, Christy. I
I
bought you a
would
puppy.
I would not open the door. Bye.
Bye.
Christy doesn't live here.
No longer my friend. Goodbye.
Look what you got yourself.
Hope you like that dog.
So it did start me questioning, like, well, what do people mean when they say raise them right? And then asking people the question of how familiar are you with dog behavior in
Yes.
general? And then, what really qualifies an individual to raise a puppy right? Because as Heather and I have gone through this, Heather obviously started with more knowledge given her background, but as I have learned over the years about puppies and puppy culture and all
Yeah.
these things, I kind of personally became overwhelmed with how much there is to raising a puppy right.
There is a lot.
And right in quotation marks, but
Right.
yes, there's so much to it. Introducing them to people of different sizes and color, and people with hats and people without hats, and people with disabilities who hunch over.
Walkers,
Um,
wheelchairs,
Yes, different floors, noisy environments, different noises.
kids.
So there's just a lot to expose a puppy to when thinking about what could my future hold with this dog
Yeah.
and what do I want to make sure that they have a solid foundation on. And that kind of got me thinking, I don't think people realize how much there is to it. I think a lot of times when people say, I want to get a puppy so I raise them right, what they mean is, I want a puppy who hasn't been abused.
And you wanna raise
And
them with a whole lot of love within their
with a lot of
family so that they
yes.
be exposed to their family, but in reality, like, just your family unit isn't really socializing them, that's just their family unit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to raise their puppies, right? I don't think
For
people
sure.
get puppy the normal person, there's bad players in
Right.
everything, but the normal person does not get a puppy and say like, "Oh, I really hope I raised this puppy wrong.
Right.
I really hope I damaged this puppy
Let me
permanently."
just set this puppy up for the next 20 years so I can have a crappy family member.
Yeah. So I
Was
think that kind of like
Let me ask
led
you
us down
something.
this road.
Was watching me with Tiago sort of your first experience with somebody who's really passionate about trying to, in quotation marks, do it the right way?
Hmm. I don't know. Probably
Or
in
somebody who's like more passionate about it, does a lot of research, blah, 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 and then sets out to sort of do it with the
I think
intent. Yeah,
yeah, I think possibly you were probably the more organized person I had
fair
met that
enough.
was doing it,
Because
who
Heather has a
had
checklist.
yeah, because I think I've met other passionate people who were socializing and
Yeah,
doing everything that they knew to do with the research that was out there at the time.
yeah,
But Heather was like checking things off, like these are the things that are important, and I want to make sure that they happen in specific weeks of the
yeah,
dog's life and then continue on from there. And so I don't think I had ever experienced that
yeah,
formality in
yeah.
it before.
Yeah, because I pretty much when I have a puppy, it's like, man, life goes on hold for those first like 8 weeks or so that the puppy's home. Because
Yeah.
I wanna be able to do everything I can during that imprinting period. And even beyond that, try my best to make things stack that deck in my favor. So yeah, I was just curious if you've kind of experienced that with other people.
Yeah, and I think like even having Lizzie, the puppy that we did have, like
Yeah.
we were told socialize her. So I was pretty on it with like socialization, like
Yeah.
taking her to PetSmart. I mean, we did the best we could with the
Yeah, for
information we had,
sure.
but I was very active in like, I wanted to enroll her in puppy school. I wanted to socialize her with as many people as I could. And she was really people social because that was a big concern being part Shar is
Yeah.
a lot of times they only love their family and they're very cautious of strangers. And we knew we were a very social family
Yeah.
and we had a lot of people coming over. My parents were like the college group hosts at our church. So, we
Yeah.
had lots of people coming in all the time. And so we knew we needed a social puppy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm lucky enough once again to have all these great people that helped me along the way and taught me. But even having said that, the way that I socialized Tiago in 2017 is not the way that I will hopefully socialize my puppy, maybe that might be coming this year. Some of
Mhm.
it is the same. I will still choose to introduce my new puppy to appropriate adult dogs outside of his or her home. The dogs that we're so into with Tiago learning from are now seniors. And so I need to like come up with a whole new list of adult
Mhm.
dogs because I would not ask Lucy. She would not enjoy that because we're not just going to adult dogs and being like, hey, we don't care if you like it or not. Let's just go have at it. We want adult dogs who are also very fair and are going to enjoy the time too. That's a whole nother piece of it. And then we already talked about how I sort of over socialize Tiago to people. Won't be doing that this time around. Still, all the exposure to the people, the places, the children, the environments, all of that stuff, but more in a passive socialization type of way because we know better, we do better. It is interesting to think about from the average family who's getting a pet. We don't mean that in a knock way. This was us when we were growing up. We're getting a pet. You're not seeking out actively, majority of the most recent articles on training, and you're not tapped into that world. So it's really difficult to get the good information. If you're trying to look up how to train a dog, you're going to get 572 opinions, and you're going to be sitting
Mhm.
there as a person just going, what the fuck is the right thing to listen to? So that's really hard too. I think it makes it, man, it makes it almost impossible to know what the heck to listen to. And I think that that probably goes into why I created my business, which is socializing and training and working with puppies for people. When I set out to create Puppy K All Day, it was really because I'm super passionate about all of this stuff. And I want everyone to be able to have the opportunity to have their puppy brought up with the most support possible. I also want people to enjoy their puppies. So if you are overwhelmed and like don't know what to do, don't know what article to listen to, need to work a full-time job and have 3 kids and you're trying to bring up a puppy, holy cow, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
Yeah, so they wanna do the right thing. All of my clients know that they don't have all the tools they need, and that it's not like they're like me where they're super passionate about doing all the research to figure it out. They have a full life. My life is dogs. So to me, it's like, well, I've already done the research. I've already looked at everything. I know how I would raise a puppy. And if you align with the way that I would raise a puppy, bring it on, let me help you
Mhm.
with that. So far, all of my clients have been so thankful because they still get to enjoy their puppy. The topic is kind of coming from a good place. I want to raise them right because we're
Mhm.
adding this family member, but there are definitely other ways to think about it, I guess.
Yeah. And I think it goes saying I want to raise them right comes from the saying it's all in how you raise them.
Yes.
It kind of is an offshoot of
Yes.
that train of thought that you have to raise them yourself
Yeah.
or you have to know how they were raised for them to be an okay dog.
Yeah.
They have to have a really great intro to life to
Yep.
be a good dog later in life,
Yep.
which we always want to set a dog up for success. We want to
For
stack the
sure.
deck in our favor. But there are so many examples of really great dogs who had a really bad start to life.
Yeah.
And there's great examples of dogs who struggled later in
Yeah.
life, who had really great upbringings, that we
Yeah.
know that the start to life was very cush and
Yeah.
very
I mean, I've
was
owned 3 of them.
yeah. So let's talk about your dogs.
Of course, as you all know, I had a pit bull named Lucy, and we adopted her when she was 14 weeks old in 2005. And we were of the mindset that we were going to raise this puppy right. And we were going to bring her into our home with our 2 other dogs. And because we were starting with her as a puppy, that everyone was going to get along perfectly. It sounds so stupid now. Not stupid, just like silly. Nobody's stupid for thinking that. It just feels silly to
Yeah.
me at this point.
It's so much a cultural thing
Yes. Yes.
that you
Wow.
buy into it.
That was a very
Yeah.
enthusiastic yes. Yeah, we adopted her, and as you know from the Our Dogs episode, things didn't go as planned. And I spent a lot of time socializing Lucy. She actually went to the daycare that I worked at and was active in at the time. She started training as soon as she got her vaccinations, and we were working towards her becoming my agility dog. So I was very passionate about her being out in the world, and the way I did things back in mid 2000s was, the best that I could do considering the circumstances and the knowledge that we had at the time. I feel like I did a really good job in quote raising her right. And by the time she was, 16 months old, we started having problems within our home. And while there were dogs that Lucy was social with as a young dog, even after we started having problems in our home, ultimately she became an only dog in our singleton. And we never ended up introducing her to anyone else once we got to a certain point in her age because it was the right thing for her. There's an example of a dog that we quote raised right and shit went wrong. A huge piece of that is just that was her genetics and that's who she was. And I could not combat those genetics no matter what I did. The flip side of that would be Daisy and Remy. Remy came into our home about 4 years old when we adopted her. She walked into our house similar to Daisy and just said, "Okay, this is where I am. Cool. I'm acclimated and I'm good to go." With Remy's situation, she came into the local intake shelter. She was almost completely bald. She had really, really bad allergies, environmental and food, and she was in a pretty bad way medically as a young dog. She spent 2 years in foster in rescue, waiting for her home. She ended up being completely dog social and people social. And she actually was tested and passed to be a therapy dog. But the day that she was supposed to have her first visit was when her back stuff started. So she had gone through the process to be a registered therapy dog as well as Daisy. So it is assumed that Remy didn't have maybe the I don't want to say like Remy was an abuse case or anything like that, but I think that whoever had her didn't have great resources. I don't think that they were probably doing everything that I was doing with my
We weren't
Lucy.
doing puppy culture. We weren't
No, they
doing
weren't like doing neurostim at when she was 3 weeks old, and they weren't doing socialization trips to different Home Depot, Lowe's, and etcetera. They weren't putting her through training classes and all of that stuff. And similarly with Daisy, she was found as a stray when she was about 4, I believe, and she went into rescue. She was, as we know, a medical nightmare. She had to have some pretty extensive knee reconstruction surgeries on both knees when she came in. And so she spent a lot of time getting recuperated from the medical side. And then her initial foster is fantastic, but he was a young guy at the time living in a house with other bachelors. I don't think he was doing all that well, and she was already 4, but I don't think he was doing all the things that I was doing with my young dogs. But he did a great job of getting her fixed up medically. She then bounced around to an adoptive home for a year, which was a good situation for her, but then they couldn't keep her, and then she bounced back, and then she bounced to our house. I mean, this dog bounced all around probably her whole life. She just cruised into our house at like 8 years old and was like, "Hey guys, I'm here. I'm amazing. Live with the magic and love it." And we did. And
She
I mean,
was magical.
she was. And I didn't do it. People say to me, "Oh my gosh, Daisy, she was an amazing therapy dog. Did you train her to do that?" I'm like, hell no. That was Daisy. That was just pure
Just who she
Daisy.
was.
Yeah. That's an example of the flip side. The reason that we bring up both sides is because I am a person who's passionate about, quote, raising my puppy right. And look how
Mhm.
wrong it can go because we have no control over genetic factors. What do I say, Kristi? Genetics are a tricky mistress.
They are.
And I think that we should talk about Choop's story because he's another great example of where things can start wrong and go completely right. I wanna call him Shoop, like Shoop doopy doop doopy. Anyway,
Da Choop.
I know, but, like, I just hear Salt and Peppa every single time that you say his name.
So Choop belongs to my friend who lives in Minnesota, and he came from a hoarding case. He came from a home with 150 dogs, which
Crazy.
is insane. Like I cannot imagine living with 150 dogs, but he did. He wasn't like a breeding facility, it was just a hoarding case. A lot of those dogs had to be dispersed out among multiple states
Mm,
because no one rescue
I
could
would think so.
step up for all of them. So when Choop came in, he is missing an eye, and they believe from trauma. Obviously, we don't know his backstory, but they think it was probably some sort of dog to dog trauma on his eye. When he first came in, his foster mom said that he was so scared. She would just sit in the room with him with his crate door open, and he would stay in the crate because he was just too scared to come out. And so she'd only like leash him to take him outside to go to the bathroom, but left everything else up to him on his terms so that he could get comfortable on
What
his
a
own
great
terms.
foster.
What an amazing foster.
Wow.
Yeah. My friends started seeing pictures of him and immediately fell in love and said, "We don't want just to adopt a dog. We want to adopt this specific dog." And her
Wow.
and her husband were both on board with it. And so when they met Choop, if I remember correctly, he hid under like a bar stool the
Oh,
entire time. He didn't want to come to them. He was not like, "These are my people," or anything like that. And they were so undeterred. When they adopted him, he still had some coming out of his shell to do.
yeah.
Obviously, he was learning to trust. At this point, this dog is like the Walmart greeter of dogs. Like
Oh my
he
god, that's
welcomes everybody
amazing.
in. Everyone is his friend, all people, all dogs. He gets along with big dogs and small dogs. It
You said
doesn't
he's cat
matter.
social too?
Oh, yeah, he lives with 2 cats. So that was a concern of mine when she first got him. I said, "He looks like a cattle dog. Are we sure that he's gonna be cat social? Because I don't want something to happen to your cats." He's like 20 pounds, and I am not a small dog person in that I love all dogs. I don't want to own a small dog personally. I don't want it living in my home
I can't
permanently.
wait until you're like 75 years old and have a small dog and I can replay this
Like
for you.
50 small dogs. No, but, like, I do definitely threaten to steal Choop because he is so amazing. He looks very big in pictures. He looks like a
He
40-pound dog
does.
in
I
pictures.
was, like, shocked when you told me his actual size because I look at pictures of him and I'm like 35, 40 pounds.
And then if you compare the pictures with the cats, he's barely larger than them.
I don't think I've seen a picture like that, but that's so funny because then you see it in
You
perspective and you're
still
like,
I still believe he's big. Like, I
yeah.
still think of him as a
That's
big dog,
probably why
so
you like him because in your mind, you're like, he's like a 35-pound dog, not a little
yeah,
dog.
totally.
Yeah.
He is well, and he's got the personality of your big dog.
Yeah.
He's not trying to prove anything, he's just a big dog.
He's
He's
like,
like,
"Hey guys,
"Hey,
I'm
everybody's
here.
my friend."
Welcome to the
Yeah,
party."
he is so great, and now he goes to the old folks home, and he or
Aw.
is that that might not be the right term to call it anymore. The
Oh.
the retirement
The
home.
retirement facility, old folks home, that is not getting edited out.
So sorry if that was offensive to anyone. Um, yes, the retirement facility, but he goes there and he volunteers and they just love him. And also my friend does Big Brothers Big Sisters and she has a little brother right now, and so her little comes over and he does great with her little brother. He's good with kids, he's good with adults, he's good with dogs, he's good with cats. It's like everyone on earth is his friend.
Chup is
Um
killing it at life, man.
yeah, I mean
And
he
your
has.
friends did a great job supporting him in the
Yes.
beginning, what he needed to sort of come out.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely a case he was not getting what he needed in the
Yeah,
beginning and still ended up being an amazing dog. I also don't want everyone to think, oh, if you just love them enough, it's going to
right.
be enough. Because the same friend and I have a mutual friend who did adopt an adult dog from a breeding facility, and she still is pretty feral
Yeah,
after 3 years of care and love
yeah,
and doing multiple trainers and behaviorists getting
yeah.
involved and meds, all of it. And I think they've come to accept that that's who she is.
Yep.
They're letting her live her best life in that condition
In those
as,
terms,
a
yeah.
feral dog who lives with two people who she can
Well, and
tolerate.
they do a really good job of, like, respecting her boundaries so that she
Yes.
can live the best life possible considering the circumstances,
And
and really, because they do such a good job, she's living her best life
she
as
really is.
the dog she is. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wanna share one more story because we haven't talked about a puppy or a dog situation where the person goes to an ethical, responsible breeder and
Mhm.
they have done everything to stack the deck in their favor and crap goes wrong. So I
Yeah.
wanna kinda make sure that we touch on examples of all sides. Everyone knows that my world is Rottweilers, and that's where I came from. I have a friend who quite literally did everything possible to stack the deck in their favor when they were getting a new puppy. And they went to someone who they knew the lines really well. They had had dogs from them before or related to them before. They were sticking to a breed. They had been in Rottweilers for decades at this point, extremely experienced owners. They got a puppy and that breeder did all the things that we would want, when
Yep.
raising the litter and making everything happen. This family, and I actually met the dog. Did you know that? I actually met him.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, so I actually did meet him when he was an adolescent. I think he was probably around a year old. So not sexually mature, not socially mature at that point. Before the age of 2, unfortunately, some things transpired and this dog was not well. He had some serious behavior issues, even though they had done, in quotations, everything right. They ended up having to euthanize him because he was not safe. I fully support their decision. I have no doubt that this was what needed to happen for the safety of the family because he was not well. But that's an example of, hey, we did everything we're supposed to do and shit went south really bad. And
Right.
I know I actually have personally met another dog from that litter who's great. And so it's just really interesting to me how there's like the flip side of it as well. And here we
Mhm.
sit back to the same point, which is genetics. You can't fight the genetic background. You can
Sure.
you can structure some things to try to help it. You can support the dog. You can, try to combat it with different behavioral protocols and everything else. But at the end of the day, my Lucy was who she was. My Daisy was who she was. Remy was who she was. Choop is who he is. We can bust our asses to make everything perfect, but we still have to remember that that genetic factor is there, and it's a big piece of it.
Right.
Going back to, I want a puppy to get them, wanna get a puppy to raise them right, and then also it's all in how you raise them. I think the main point is that we want people to think,
Yeah.
and when they're thinking about their next dog, whether it be an adult or a puppy, that they really think through what resources do I have if I get a puppy and how I'm
Mhm.
going to support it, how I'm going to raise it. Do I have a team around me that can help me with this? Do I have a trainer that I already know and I know I want to utilize? Do I need to look for someone like me who's doing this as a passion and as a business to help support our family during the formative months?
Yeah.
Or like Christy, is an adult
Yeah.
dog a better decision?
Yeah.
Plugging
I love
Julius, the perfect foster right now. But
Julius
really,
is amazing. Yeah.
yeah,
I love getting an adult dog because you know what you're getting into most
yeah,
of the time.
I
Like,
actually love it
obviously,
too. Yes.
environment matters. Like, so sometimes people will be like, well, the dog at the shelter wasn't barking and now it's a barker. Yes,
Yeah,
environment matters. But for the most part, you are getting a dog, you're seeing who they are
yeah,
as an adult. And so that's not going to change significantly for
right.
you.
Unless a major
Um,
event happens.
yeah, unless
Yeah,
there's, some, well, there's a
right.
lot of reasons that it could, but for the most part, you're pretty much getting who you're bargaining for.
Yeah,
I like to look for dogs that meet the criteria I'm looking for,
yeah,
but as an adult,
yeah,
so that I don't have to train that in. It's just who they are. And then I can work from there because there's always things we can train, right?
right,
Uh, Training is never done, but who they are is developed.
right.
And and I like knowing who they are.
And if you are looking at it, so say you're a family who has children and has a cat, then I would say look to organizations who have dogs in foster homes. And you can literally find people who have dogs that are in foster with kids and a cat. And then you have information about this dog. And it's a such an easier transition than what if you start with a puppy that you have no knowledge of and you're not capable of supporting it because life, and then the dog ends up not liking kids or chases your cat or whatever. So I think there's
Or is
value.
too rough with your kids, like, really
Yes,
loves them, but man, like,
but
tackles them.
man is a lot. FYI, Tiago, when my family visits with my niece and nephews, Tiago is highly managed during that time because Tiago is a lot of dog for children. He has not grown up with children and he gets very worried and concerned about children making certain noises. He's not a dog who could easily live with children now because he wasn't exposed to it, and also, I don't think that he would have a great quality of life if he lived in a house full of kids. These are all things that you wanna be thinking about when you're like, "Hey, let's get a puppy. Hey, let's add an adult dog." Look at your life and see and be honest about it. Choose the right fit for your family.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with wanting a puppy or an adult dog,
Nope.
either one, but also, I think we have to stop some of these things because
Yeah.
it's all in how you raise them, really demonizes shelter dogs that are adults,
Yes.
really stands in the way of people even considering
Yes.
getting an adult dog that is fantastic,
When
you
really, in
know?
a lot of ways, those are the easier way to go.
Yeah,
In a lot
yeah,
of situations, they are.
yeah.
And we have a lot of examples of shelter dogs, dogs in rescue, dogs who came from hoarding situations, dogs who came from dog fighting busts that are fantastic family pets. And
Mhm.
that spectrum is broad and wide, but there are a ton of examples. And so if we keep saying it's all in how you raise them, damn, you're putting like a rubber stamp on all of those amazing adult dogs who had a crappy, crappy start in life, like my
Yeah.
Daisy, my Remy.
And how unkind is it to say that to someone like your friend who did everything right, or to you who
Right?
did everything right, and then
To
say,
say,
well,
"Oh,
it's all
you
on
did."
how you raise them, so this is clearly your fault. Like,
Yes.
you're responsible for this.
And the statement, "I wanna get a puppy to raise them right," it's like, well, come back at me and be like, "Oh, clearly you raised her wrong." Well,
Yeah.
shit. I mean, I did everything I possibly could. My friend did everything that she could, and it just went south.
Yeah.
So when you have somebody say to you, Christy, they see Lucy, and Like, clearly, we all know she's perfect. So they see Lucy and they say to you, "Oh, wow, it's all in how you raise them." What do you say?
I typically say I didn't raise her, I got as an
Oops.
adult. Yeah. Yeah. And in her younger years, people would often back away from her when I
Yeah,
said that.
because she does look like a
She
pit
is
bull.
she is a pit
I
bull.
mean, she is
She's
a pit
like
bull. We know now, we got her DNA back,
genetically tested 97% pit bull.
but she looks very typical pit bull.
Yes, she does. Now she's very not intimidating with her gray face, and she
Yeah,
usually has pearls on,
yeah.
and sometimes like a little jacket
Oh,
with unicorns on it. So she's
adorable.
very 0% intimidating to anyone at this point. So then now, so in the past they would back away. Now they just go, "Oh, that's nice,"
Yeah.
and then they continue petting her. So what is your typical response?
If people say to me, I want to get a puppy to raise them right, or it's all in how you raise them, I usually just give a little, hey, genetics is a thing. And a lot of times that will make people sort of stop and like give me a quizzical look. And I'm a person who loves to educate. And if they seem like the door is open, then I will most certainly walk through it and have a conversation. I mean, clearly I'm an extrovert, I'll talk to anybody. I also don't feel an obligation to educate the world at this point. So I just like to have my little tagline that I kind of toss out as an automatic response, and I let people sit with it. And if it plants a seed, great. If it doesn't, that's cool. My experience has been my own experience and has brought me to where I am now. So I just try to really think about things at this point, because everybody who says these statements is coming from a good place. I used to say these things. We go back to, now we know better, so we do better, because they're just not accurate statements.
Yeah, and I think that's what we would hope people get out of this
Yeah.
episode is maybe think before you say certain phrases, the phrases that are thrown around all the time that are so socially common and so
Yeah.
socially accepted, but may not be true.
Yeah.
And consider a lot of just thinking through and consideration of if you do want to get a puppy, what resources do you have?
Yes.
What is your knowledge of dog behavior? Do you need to up that before you get your puppy? And what support do you have? Or, you know, what is stopping you from getting an adult dog
Yes.
as well? So all of those are things we would hope that this kind of gets you thinking about. Like we said, there's no right or wrong answers.
We want you to pick the right dog for your family.
But yeah, we just want you to have a good experience with the dog that's
Yeah.
living in your home.
Because we also want you to keep in mind this is going to be your family member for the rest of your life. Well, the rest
Yeah,
of their life. If only it was the rest of our lives, but the rest of their
I
life.
know.
And we want it to be enjoyable. We want it to be a great experience for you and the dog. Everybody
Absolutely.
go love their dogs.
Yes. Absolutely. Yes, and if you enjoyed this episode, subscribe, rate us, and be sure to share us with your friends.
Yes. Thank you so much for listening. And until next time, bye.
Bye.